What's up, everybody? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about just a ton of different stuff. Hope you enjoyed. If you do, make sure to leave a like rating on it and subscribe to the channel as well for more content just like this every single day. With those things said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this was a bit of a long winding road in terms of a video. So I saw some rumors yesterday. I made a YouTube short about it, about John Collins not being happy in Atlanta. And I incorrectly stated in that short that he can't be traded until after the deadline. He can. So I started kind of with that concept. Then I started seeing some rumors today about some Ben Simmons stuff. Shocker, I know. And the fact that Philly is, whether it be in a trade with Atlanta directly or not, attempting to attach Tobias Harris along with Ben Simmons in Ben Simmons trades. And so I started messing around with some things. And this is kind of the conclusion I came to. I'll get to the trade in a second. But initially for Atlanta, I'm thinking Collins being upset makes sense. We've heard some rumblings and some rumors about this in the past. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, just typical, frustration. It says that he's frustrated with his role, but I'm sure if they were 10 games above 500, he really wouldn't care too much about his role. So I'm sure it's a combination of that, but also them just not winning basketball games. And even, Atlanta's GM has come out and said that maybe they shouldn't have brought everybody back. Maybe they do have one too many players. It's an interesting comment for a general manager to make, but it's a truthful one. I think Atlanta is certainly at the top of the list in terms of teams around the league that are good, but they just have too many guys. They can't give minutes to everybody that they need to. There's no way for everybody to get comfortable in their role because they're playing so many different ones on a night-to-night basis. And the weird thing is, you would have expected that a team as deep as Atlanta would actually be having a really good season because of the circumstances of this year, guys in and out of the lineup all the time, but that just hasn't been the case, mostly because they haven't been able to guard. And so if you're Atlanta, you're looking at two different things in terms of possible trades. You need to get better defensively from a personnel standpoint. Atlanta got better as the season went on last year, but at a certain point, you need better guys defensively. They don't have that. They need a backcourt partner alongside Trae Young that can guard and it can create offense for himself rather than just being a sometimes ball handling two guard like Kevin Huerter and Bogdan Bogdanovic. They need someone else there that's going to be able to create a little bit more. And so that got me thinking on this line of thinking. And now for Philly, I'm like, the Tobias Harris Ben Simmons thing was a little weird at first because my first thought was that's $70 million in salary that you have to find a place for. And I don't understand what Philly's reasoning is because I don't think Tobias Harris necessarily has a ton of value on the trade market. And so are they trying to use Ben Simmons' value to get rid of Tobias Harris's contract? Like, are they trying to send both of those guys out and then get less in exchange for Ben Simmons than they would for Simmons straight up, but they get out of the money of Harris? Are they seeing Harris as an asset? You never know with Daryl Morey and with what Philly's thinking. But all of that led me to this. Now, there's a couple of different versions of this. There's one that involves Charlotte as well that I'll get to later. But here's where I ended up. You can see the trade on screen. Let me first get to each of the problems that I'm trying to solve for each of these teams. As the title references, I'm trying to fix each of these teams with this one trade. So for Philly, the primary issue is that they have a basketball player who's not playing for them, and that's Ben Simmons. And they need perimeter creation, they need spacing, they need shooting, they need depth. And if they're going to attach Tobias Harris to that as well, that allows them to get a little bit more in exchange. Atlanta needs to get better defensively. They need players that fit alongside Trae Young, and they need to get guys that can guard. Minnesota is a team that is really, really interesting. They've got some interesting young guys, but they have a glaring issue at the 4 spot. They don't have anybody that can score at that spot. They have some interesting, high energy guys, but they desperately need someone better at the 4 spot on the offensive end of the floor. And then Sacramento is in a situation where they might potentially just want to get out of the De'Aaron Fox thing and focus on Tyrese Haliburton and Davion Mitchell moving forward and try to get out of the money of Fox, get some young assets in return, and then move forward from there. Which is how we ended up with Philly getting Bogdanovic, Beasley, Prince, and Collins. The Hawks getting Simmons and Fox. The Timberwolves getting Tobias Harris. And the Kings getting Dylan Gallinari and Cam Reddish. Now, I'm under no impression that everybody's going to fall in love with this trade, think it's the greatest thing that anyone's ever created in the trade machine. I totally get that. But here's what I'm thinking. If you're Philly, the idea of even getting someone like CJ McCollum in exchange for Ben Simmons might be dwindling here, especially CJ not even being healthy, and just the idea of them getting a legitimate true all-star back that fits with this roster, I think is relatively unlikely at this point. However, it's certainly a situation where I do think they need to move Simmons before the deadline this year because of how unbelievable Joel Embiid has been to begin this season. So in that scenario, they're getting Bogdanovich, who helps them as a backcourt creator, someone that can hit tough shots at the end of games, someone that can create for himself as well as others, is just a really, really good player to put in that backcourt. Not necessarily a primary ball handling guy, but still in this scenario, someone that helps. Malik Beasley, a guy that's been struggling a bit to shoot, but is someone that in the right situation can defend and can score and shoot for you. Again, gives them more of that perimeter depth that they've been lacking pretty much the entirety of the time that they've been in this whole, Embiid Simmons era, even going back to when Jimmy Butler was there. Taurean Prince is here for salary filler, no offense. And then John Collins, who basically swaps out from that Tobias Harris spot and is someone that he provides more versatility in a really interesting way than Harris does, because I think people think of Harris as a really versatile player, and not wrong, but offensively, Philly, they basically screwed up when they traded for him and re-signed him a big deal in the first place, because what made Tobias Harris in LA with the Clippers was that he was a really good pick and roll player and a creator and someone that had the ball in his hands a lot. And then he comes to Philly, they're like, hey, you're going to be an off-ball player and hit shots off the ball. And it just doesn't really work as well within the flow of the offense. Some of that's because of the way that, Simmons affected their spacing and different things like that. But with Simmons out and Collins in and Harris out as well, Collins can space. He can absolutely punish second units as well. If you want to put him at the 4 or the 5, he's a really difficult guy to match up with. You can put him at the 5 as a ball screen guy, and I think he's someone that fits at the end of games as well. It's not a super clean fit. You'd rather have someone that is, like a lockdown defender 4 type that can space, which Ben Simmons is all those things with the exception of the ability to space. But in this scenario, I don't think this is necessarily bad value for Philly to get all these players back in exchange for Simmons and Harris, to get out of the Harris money, to get players that are actually going to play basketball for you. And every single one of these guys, except for Taurean Prince, can play in a playoff series. So you get, you go from 2 guys that can play in a playoff series, 1 that's not going to play for you at all, and you get 3 back. No all-stars here, but a couple of really good players for Philly. For Atlanta, it's all about defense, right? Ben Simmons, when locked in, when engaged, is, in my opinion, the best perimeter defensive player in the league. And someone that is going to be, again, if he pays attention, a perennial defensive player of the year candidate. De'Aaron Fox is a bit of a tougher sell here in Atlanta. I know that he's a bigger name. I know that he's really interesting. He's a young player. He's on a rookie max. But I think kind of the league in general has soured a little bit on De'Aaron Fox, especially given how well the guards in Sacramento have played with Fox out of the lineup. But here's the case. Here's the elevator pitch for De'Aaron Fox. If you're looking for someone that can play alongside Trae Young, that can create and be the primary ball handler, allowing Trae to play more off the ball, and in theory, can be a very good defender as well, provides decent size and length and activity level to be able to take away that defensive assignment from Trae, De'Aaron Fox is about as good as you're going to get in that scenario in terms of guys that would actually be available via a trade. I understand that when you look at these 2 guys and you think about how the Hawks have been successful with Trae Young, it's all about spacing. It's having a ton of guys on the floor that can shoot. And neither of these guys, Simmons especially, are outstanding perimeter spacers. I totally get that. I totally understand that. But at a certain point, the whole perimeter spacing thing has not been working because you haven't been able to guard. So maybe you can find a happy medium where you have plus defenders on the floor and you still find a way to space, especially if Trae is one of those guys that's playing off the ball a little bit more, which I think is something that can make him even more effective. For Minnesota, it's pretty self-explanatory. They're giving up the least amount in this deal. They're giving up Prince and they're giving up Beasley. Prince, basically just salary stuff. Beasley is an interesting player moving forward, but someone whose time kind of might have run out there in Minnesota. And yeah, they're taking on some salary here. This is another huge contract to add to their books. But if you're just trying to make sure that you're creating a good to really good team around Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, then Tobias Harris is not a bad addition, certainly as a scoring forward. They're going to continue to have to figure some things out defensively, but I think this is in terms of destinations from a roster fit standpoint for Tobias Harris, doesn't get much better than Minnesota. And then Sacramento gets rid of De'Aaron Fox. They take back Gallinari. That basically just gets them out of the Fox money a little bit earlier. And you get Cam Reddish, who I know Hawks fans don't want to give up, but there have been some rumors lately that Atlanta is exploring trading Reddish rather than having to pay him a big contract. I understand that the logic there doesn't follow, right? Because why would you be so concerned about having to give Reddish this new contract and then trade for someone like De'Aaron Fox, who's on a big contract? I understand that that logic doesn't follow. However, if they are looking to move Reddish, Sacramento, I think, would be a team that would be interested. And I know you can poke holes in every single part of this trade. That's the way the trades work. But I think this is really interesting. The fifth team that could be involved in this, the other version, I should say, is Charlotte. Because if you look at this Atlanta team and you add Simmons and you add Fox, you're thinking, is there a way we can run Simmons at the small ball 5 sometimes? And in Atlanta, that's possible, but they have 2 legitimately good 5s right now in Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. And if you really want to run Simmons at the 5, one of those guys is basically not going to play. So there's another version of this where Atlanta flips Capella to Charlotte in exchange for like Plumlee and Kelly Oubre, giving them another wing, shipping a big to Charlotte that they desperately need, and kind of opening up that front court rotation a little bit to have some more flexibility there with Simmons. So ultimately, I think this is super, super interesting. When you look at the rumors, when you kind of follow what's happening, it seems like there's some discussions being had in Atlanta about a roster shakeup, and maybe some of those talks are being had specifically with Philadelphia. And I think this would be a really interesting way to shake up each of these teams, change them in a way that I think would be really positive for them. And I'm sure there are going to be people from every fan base that disagree with parts of this. But at the end of the day, I think this is a really cool trade, and I wanted to share it with you guys. And that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the boxes on screen. With all those things said, once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you all next time.